Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 33 of Project Octane. We're going to jump right into things today. We're going to pick up right where we left off with episode 32. And to kick things off, I just kind of want to highlight a couple of signatures here on the car. We've got the big man over at Epic Games, Tim Sweeney, CEO. I didn't get a chance to talk with Tim when he signed the car. I'm not sure whether he actually knows where it's from. Luckily, we had this massive sign at the Epic Games party to let him know what you all already know, is that, it's a real life version of the car from Fortnite. But unfortunately for his signature and everyone else's, all things must come to an end. With putting a wrap on the car at the end of the day, this will be the last time we see these signatures. But now that everyone's had a moment to post in the comments and let me know that the Octane's actually from Rocket League, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate all the love and support. The comments really help, bolster the algorithm. I don't think people realize that this project started before Epic Games even bought Rocket League, let alone that I've got 9 years in the game. But hey, I don't blame them. And kind of to solidify that, the two gentlemen here helping me out today are actually my rank 3s partners for the last 5 years now, and it's been nothing but a downward trajectory. Like, I fell into Diamond 3 a couple weeks ago, and I haven't talked to them since. But I decided to have these bozos actually help me out for once, so they came over to the house for the weekend. We put them to work, because God knows the amount of sanding that we're going to do today was not possible for one person. I was actually reading a Reddit post the other day talking about how woodworking is 90% sanding, and today's video is just the biggest reminder for me to never get into woodworking, because quite frankly, it sucks. Just spending your entire weekend smoothing plastic parts out. But it's a necessary step. All of our printed parts here have layer lines or minor defects that need to be smoothed out in order for the vinyl wrap to actually stick to the parts. There's also a lot of parts that haven't even been glued together permanently yet. Things where we weren't sure until after that Bodywork 2 video where we did our kind of final fit checks. Were we ready to actually kind of permanently join a lot of these parts? And to be honest, even after this video, there's several things I would do differently. I'm kind of using the adhesive as kind of like a weld bead in a way here. But unfortunately, as we kind of found out, is that when you go back later and sand that smooth, there's not a lot of adhesive left. You're kind of just gluing something together just to then grind it off later. For anyone that is looking to assemble 3D printed parts together, I think my recommendation at this point would be, once you have them kind of end up together, take a soldering iron with a flat tip and kind of actually melt the surface of the plastic all the way around the parts together to get you a permanent joint. And then come back and kind of clean up that bond line, with whatever body filler or whatever you have on hand. Don't get me wrong, the plastic bonder is a strong bond, but it's only as good so long as it's there. But in many ways, that's what this project is. I have not done a lot of this stuff before. I have not done bodywork before, so there's been a lot of learning points throughout, this entire build, not just in today's video. One of the next kind of things I learned was actually this next step here, where we're putting glazing putty on the car just to kind of fill all those minor imperfections. And the stuff actually seems to work pretty well, but more so for smaller spots and scratches, not necessarily across an entire surface. It's really brittle once it dries, and so it gets incredibly dusty. And I think doing like an epoxy coating over all the plastic would have been a better way to both seal and fill lumps and bumps. Some of you may be asking, well, why do you even have to smooth all this out if you're just putting a wrap over it? And one thing that a wrap won't do is mask imperfections on the car surface. And so if there's a ridge, there's a line, there's a divot or something, that will show through the wrap. And so just in the interest of having the best finish, the best result possible, just try to go the extra mile here. Unfortunately, when you go and start sanding off all of that glazing putty, it clogs pads like crazy. It just creates a massive dust field everywhere. Like, even the things that are plastic wrapped somehow end up coated in this paint dust later on. But it does its job. And in the end, we had some nice smooth parts. Once we had finished the outside of the Octane, all the parts could come off and we could focus on the inside. We're not going to go crazy here. We just needed to make sure that we could spray paint the inside surface black so that it didn't stand out from any wrap that we put on the outside surface of the Octane. So really, we're just going to rough up the surface, probably some 40 or 60 grit here, before we can then paint it. Now, I know I'm talking about this wrap a little bit already. I know a lot of y'all probably have seen the shorts or other content we've put out on other platforms. You already know what this is going to look like in the end. But for the sake of this video, just kind of forget you'd seen any of that, all right? And we'll get there here in just a couple minutes. A lot of this work in today's video and in episode 32 was in a very short time period as we kind of got ready for the Raleigh RLCS event. So we're playing catch up a little bit with today's video, since we weren't able to actually publish it ahead of time. Now, as far as the painting goes, I kind of set up a corner of my garage as a impromptu paint booth. It doesn't make for the best filming, so we're just going to show the hood here for a moment. But really, every part that's painted in my garage has just kind of been shoved back in this closet at one point or another. Now, while all the parts were off the car, ready to be painted, we did take the chassis back over to our friend Alex's house to finish some of the welding. And for those of you that did watch episode 32, the aluminum plates and the aluminum tubing here should all be pretty familiar. We already welded some of these things together then, but today we're actually welding on the mounts to the car itself. I'm sure some of y'all have picked up on this already throughout the course of the build. There's a lot of back and forth, with the assembly, disassembly of certain parts, kind of rigging them, tack welding things in place, and then taking parts off, completely welding them, painting, then re-putting parts back on. It's a very snip, snap sort of situation when you're doing something, kind of new from scratch. In hindsight, if I'd already known what the back end of the Octane was going to look like back in episode 1, then this would have saved me, some time. We would have welded all this stuff on when we did the rolling chassis, 3 years ago. But unfortunately, it's just kind of the situation we're in. It would obviously be a heck of a lot easier, if there was ever a second version or a second Octane made. But once we're done welding those tabs for the kind of rear structure on, we're going to jump back to the garage, and magically all the parts have been painted. Well, not completely. You can see that kind of just painted all of the insides or underneath sides of parts that would be visible outside of the wrap. You know, made sure that things like the kind of windowsills or some of the accent pieces, so that when the wrap goes on, we kind of keep those highlighted areas. The remaining areas, we just did not have time ahead of the event to actually give those a complete coating. But here's where the fun begins. We can actually start to do, I'm going to call it our final assembly. Even though deep down I know at some point something will cause me to take all these parts back off again. But these parts have been long needed. This is what our engine cover is going to mount to. Our wing is going to finish mounting to this. Even the side kind of bodywork panels that have even been shown previously are actually going to mount back to this as well. We also kind of have our shock fender boxes here. Again, going back 3 years, you know, would I mount the shock to this? Maybe. Might have made things a little bit simpler. But for now, it's mostly just a kind of for show piece to kind of match the game model. But it also has a tab off the side of it for mounting the rear fender. But with that structure back in place, we can move towards reassembling the main part of the body. On the driver's side of things, for this event, the door is going to be bolted closed. It also kind of just helps structurally for it to be bolted closed, since everything is just plastic. I had hoped at one point to fiberglass reinforce all the inside of these body panels, but unfortunately, once again, time was just not on our side. So for the time being, it's just going to have to kind of stay that way. And, you know, when we do get this driving again, I do worry a little bit about going down the gravel roads. I know I mentioned that in the last video. So the next time you see this drive, it'll probably be on some pavement to start, just to play things safe. But we'll just take a couple minutes here, go around the car, and install all the hardware. Now, normally this is about where I would have ended the video, but once it was back together, we could actually take the car over to the shop and get it professionally wrapped. We are not going to be putting on the vinyl ourselves in this case. But while the car was at the shop, it did give us a little bit of time to work on the engine cover. And here we actually have the bug catcher. A lot of y'all were interested in whether that's actually a functional part, and while it's not a supercharger, it does act as an intake and direct air into the engine bay. I will say this is one of the more fun parts of the build, you know, being able to take some more detailed features of the Octane and put it together, you know, to give it that kind of special touch. the engine cover itself, it doesn't have the red highlights on it yet, so forgive me if it's not 100% game accurate, but I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out so far. We also had a minute to kind of reassemble the wing. Nothing really new here. You know, it's painted black instead of white this time. We're just gonna assemble it. Neither the engine cover or the wing can travel on the Octane. There's a little bit more reinforcement that has to happen first before we can drive with those parts. So they'll remain separately for a moment until we can actually get the car on site at the event. Oh, and surprise, here we go. We've got an Octane with a wrap on it. Now, for those of you that don't know, this is the Gen G Mobile One Racing RLCS in-game decal on the car. I want to give a big shout out to the guys at Gen G. They had us out at their watch party ahead of the RLCS Major. You know, I was a little nervous at first when I took this to the shop because all of the fenders and the hood and everything else were disassembled at the time. Part of that was intentional because it makes the shop's job a little bit easier to wrap all the parts. But I also hadn't put all the parts together for the first time. And so I wasn't sure how well it was going to turn out. And we got the car back on Wednesday at about 5 p.m. And the event with Gen G started Thursday at 9 a.m. So immediately after receiving the car, I drove to Raleigh to my hotel, got there close to midnight, but then was immediately up at 6 a.m. working on the car again, getting it ready. And that kind of started out with putting the rear fenders on. I'll apologize a little bit for the footage here. I do love to show off the Octane, but usually not where I sleep. So I was trying to keep most of it covered while I was doing the initial prep work. But I was able to put all 4 fenders and the hood on in the hotel parking lot. But from there, we could actually head over to the event venue and finish the assembly of the wing and the engine cover in the parking lot. Luckily, everything came out great. And I'll show up a couple pictures here, but we'll have to save most of it for the next video where we actually do a vlog of both the Gen G event and the RLCS event over at the Lenovo Center in Raleigh. Should have that drop in about 2 weeks. In the meantime, you're going to see a bunch of shorts drop as well. Just kind of showing off some of the different things that happened. But as always, appreciate the support, and I'll see you in the next one.